The harsh, mocking laughter echoed off the
Clean that
marble
up right
walls of the
now.
grand foyer, sharper than broken glass. My eyes
Yes, right
burned
away,
with
ma'am.
tears as I stood in the center of the room, clutching a wooden mop with trembling hands. My maid uniform was torn at the shoulder, stained with grease and dirt, making me look like a pathetic, broken soul. Pointing a manicured finger at me was Chloe, dripping in diamonds and wearing a fiery red silk robe, her mouth opened wide in hysterical amusement. Beside her stood Julian, my husband of 4 years, dressed in his impeccable navy-tailored suit, his arms crossed over his chest as he laughed along with her. Surrounding us were the city's elite, whispering and gasping behind their hands. To everyone in that room, I was just a lowly, disposable servant being publicly degraded for a minor mistake. They saw a helpless woman breaking under the weight of cruel entitlement. What none of them realized was that my name is Elena Sterling. I am 29 years old, and I am the sole owner of the billion-dollar empire Julian claimed as his own. 4 years ago, I fell in love with Julian Vance. At the time, I was the quiet heiress to Sterling Global, a massive energy and real estate conglomerate built by my late father. I had inherited everything: the sprawling estate, the international portfolio, and a fortune that placed me among the world's elite. But wealth had always felt like a fortress that kept true affection out. When Julian entered my life, he seemed different. He was charming, attentive, and seemingly unbothered by my status. He spoke of building a life based on trust, humility, and unconditional devotion. Blinded by the desire to be loved for who I was rather than what I owned, I married him in a private ceremony. Out of love, I placed immense power in Julian's hands. I appointed him as the acting chief executive of Sterling Global's primary subsidiary, granting him authority to manage daily operations while I focused on our philanthropic foundations. I wanted him to feel empowered, to feel like an equal partner in my world. For the first 2 years, our marriage was idyllic. Julian played the part of the devoted husband flawlessly, but wealth has an insidious way of exposing a person's true nature. As the media began referring to him as a self-made titan, Julian's ego began to swell. He moved into the grand penthouse, bought fleet after fleet of luxury sports cars, and slowly pushed my longtime advisors out of the company. The subtle shifts in his behavior started 6 months ago. The late-night meetings became more frequent, his tone grew dismissive, and he began handling personal expenditures through hidden accounts. But what hurt most was the sudden appearance of Chloe Montgomery. Chloe was a rising socialite with a reputation for targeting wealthy men. She moved into Julian's inner circle under the guise of a brand marketing consultant. Soon, rumors began circulating in the high society columns about Julian and a mysterious blonde companion attending exclusive events in Europe, while I was away overseeing charitable projects in South America. When I returned home unannounced 3 weeks ago, I found a receipt for a 3-carat diamond necklace tucked inside Julian's coat pocket, a necklace I had never received. When I confronted him gently, he laughed it off, claiming it was an incentive gift for a high-profile corporate client. But the coldness in his eyes told a different story. I realized then that my marriage might be built on a foundation of lies. I didn't want to believe that the man I loved was using me for my fortune, but I needed absolute proof before I destroyed the life we had built together. That was when I devised the ultimate test of loyalty. I informed Julian that I would be traveling to Switzerland for a month-long medical retreat to address chronic fatigue. In reality, I never left New York. With the help of my father's most trusted advisor, Marcus, I arranged to re-enter my own estate under a complete disguise. I transformed myself into Clara, a newly hired, temporary housemaid from an impoverished background. I wore a faded, oversized gray uniform, applied subtle cosmetics to darken my skin tone, tied my hair into a messy bun, and altered my posture to appear fragile and meek. My plan was simple. I wanted to observe Julian when he believed I was thousands of miles away. I wanted to see if he would remain faithful to my memory and respect our home, or if he would drop the mask the moment my presence was removed. My first day undercover as a maid in my own mansion was a brutal awakening. I was assigned to clean the West Wing, the very sweet Julian and I used to share. Walking through those doors in dusty work boots instead of custom heels felt surreal. Within 48 hours, my worst fears were confirmed. Julian didn't wait a week. He didn't even wait 3 days. On my third afternoon in disguise, Chloe Montgomery moved into the estate. She walked through the front doors carrying designer luggage, treating the staff like livestock. I stood in the foyer with a tray of iced water as Julian wrapped his arms around her waist, kissing her passionately right in front of the butler and 2 senior maids. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. The man who had sworn eternal fidelity to me in front of hundreds of guests was now promising Chloe that this grand estate would soon be hers entirely. "Don't worry about Elena," I heard Julian whisper to Chloe as they lounged by the pool that evening. "She's frail, naive, and completely dependent on me. Her doctors in Zurich say her stress levels are critical. Once I get her to sign the full power of attorney documents next month, I'll have complete control of Sterling Global. She can live out her days in a quiet villa in Italy while you and I run this city." Listening to those words from behind the trimmed hedges, my heart didn't just break. It shattered into cold, razor-sharp pieces. The love I had felt for Julian evaporated, replaced by a deep, terrifying clarity. He had never loved me. I was merely a key to an empire, a stepping stone for his boundless ambition. For the next 10 days, I endured unimaginable treatment under Chloe's reign. Recognizing that I was new and appeared timid, Chloe made me her personal target for humiliation. She would deliberately throw wine onto the Persian rugs and demand I clean it on my hands and knees while she laughed with her friends. She would order me to fetch her tea at 3 in the morning, only to pour it into the sink because it was a degree too cold. Julian saw this mistreatment and did nothing. In fact, he encouraged it, using me as an example to show Chloe how powerful he was. "See how easy it is to control these people," he told her one afternoon as I scrubbed the marble steps beneath their feet. "Money buys obedience, Chloe. Never forget that." I swallowed every insult, every cruel word, every ache in my back. I let the dirt stain my apron and the grease cover my hands. Each act of cruelty was simply another entry in the ledger of retribution I was building in my mind. Marcus kept in daily contact with me through a micro-earpiece, gathering financial records, banking transfers, and digital communications that proved Julian was actively attempting to siphon company funds into offshore accounts registered in Chloe's name. The climax of their arrogance arrived on a Saturday evening, when Julian decided to host an unannounced, lavish gala at the estate to celebrate a major contract win. He invited 50 of the city's most influential investors, board members, and socialites. It was a clear declaration of his growing power, designed to cement his position as the true head of Sterling Global before my supposed return. Chloe was determined to shine as the hostess of the evening. She spent the entire day terrorizing the household staff, demanding absolute perfection. By 8 in the evening, the ballroom was filled with laughter, glittering diamonds, and flowing champagne. I was assigned to sweep the main foyer and clear away stray glassware. Around 9 o'clock, Chloe emerged down the grand staircase wearing a brilliant, fiery red silk robe over a sheer evening gown, dripping in my mother's heirloom diamond necklace, which she had somehow retrieved from the master safe. Seeing those diamonds, the ones my mother had passed down to me before she died, on Chloe's neck ignited a fire deep within my soul. As Chloe walked past me near the center of the foyer, she intentionally extended her foot, tripping me as I pushed my heavy mop bucket. I stumbled hard, the bucket tipping over and splashing dirty, soapy water all over her designer heels and the hem of her robe. Chloe shrieked in exaggerated horror. "You disgusting, clumsy rat!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the music in the ballroom. Within seconds, the guests poured out into the foyer to see the commotion. Instead of apologizing, I looked up from the floor, my eyes fixing on hers. "Accidents happen, ma'am," I said softly, maintaining my fragile persona. "Accidents," Chloe roared. She grabbed a decorative wooden broom resting against the wall and shoved it into my chest, forcing me backward. In her fury, she grabbed the collar of my cheap Maid uniform and yanked it violently, tearing the fabric straight down the shoulder. The cheap cotton ripped open, exposing my skin and leaving me looking utterly ruined, covered in soot, water, and torn cloth. Julian stepped out from the crowd, a drink in hand. Instead of intervening, his eyes gleamed with sadistic delight. He wrapped an arm around Chloe's waist and burst into a loud, booming laugh. "Look at her," Julian announced to the crowd of billionaires and corporate executives. "This is what happens when you hire bottom-tier trash to work in a mansion like this. She's pathetic." Chloe pointed a long, red-painted fingernail directly at my tear-stained face, her mouth wide in a grotesque, hysterical laugh. "Look at you crying on the floor," Chloe mocked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "You're nothing, a dirty, useless nobody who will spend her entire life cleaning up after real royalty like us." The crowd joined in, chuckling nervously, eager to stay on Julian's good side. I stood there in the center of my own home, holding the wooden handle of that mop, my body shivering from the cold water, my torn uniform hanging off my shoulder. Tears dripped down my soot-stained cheeks. To Julian and Chloe, I was defeated. I was a broken servant crushed beneath their boots. Julian took a step toward me, his face twisted in smug arrogance. "Pack your trash and get out of my house before I have security throw you into the street," he sneered, crossing his arms over his navy suit jacket. "You don't belong in a place like this." I slowly lowered the mop. I wiped the tears from my cheeks with the back of my hand, taking a deep, steadying breath. The trembling in my posture vanished. My back straightened, aligned with a fierce, regal dignity that instantly shifted the energy in the massive room. The quiet, pathetic maid was gone. I looked Julian dead in the eye, my voice cutting through the remaining chatter with the cold precision of a diamond blade. "You're right about one thing, Julian," I said, my tone crisp, clear, and perfectly articulated in the polished accent of high society. "Trash does need to be removed from this house, but it isn't me." Julian's laughter died in his throat. He blinked, confusion flickering across his features as he registered the sudden, radical change in my voice. Chloe's sneer froze. Before anyone could speak, the double oak front doors swung open with a heavy thud. Marcus stepped into the foyer, flanked by 4 armed security guards and 2 senior detectives from the Financial Crimes Division. The guests gasped, stepping back to create a wide path. Marcus walked straight past Julian, stopping directly in front of me. He bowed his head respectfully and produced a plush, heavy cashmere coat from his arm, gently draping it over my torn shoulders to cover the ripped uniform. "Good evening, Mrs. Sterling," Marcus said loudly enough for every person in the room to hear. "The asset freezes have been executed, and the board has been assembled as requested." The name echoed through the foyer like a thunderclap. "Mrs. Sterling." Julian's face drained of every ounce of color, turning a sickly, ghostly gray. His drink slipped from his hand, the crystal glass shattering into 100 pieces on the marble floor. "Elena," he stammered, his voice cracking violently. What is this?" Chloe looked between Julian and me, her eyes wide with mounting horror. "Elena? Who is Elena? Julian, what is he talking about?" I reached up, unpinned the messy hair bun, and let my long dark hair fall naturally over my shoulders. I took a damp cloth from Marcus and wiped away the light cosmetic grime from my face, revealing the unblemished, sharp features that had graced the covers of business journals for years. "Julian," I said, stepping closer to him as he involuntarily backed away. "You told your mistress that I was frail, naive, and easily controlled. You told her that this mansion, this empire, and my fortune would soon belong to you. Did you really think I would leave my father's legacy in the hands of a snake?" "Elena, wait, please," Julian pleaded, his arrogant posture instantly collapsing into desperate terror. He dropped to his knees right there on the wet marble floor, reaching for the hem of my cashmere coat. "It's not what it looks like. I was playing along with her. I was trying to protect the company. I love you, Elena." Chloe gasped in betrayal. "Julian, what are you saying?" I looked down at the man I had once loved, feeling nothing but a profound, cold pity. "You didn't love me, Julian. You loved the shadow of my wealth. You mistreated the staff. You embezzled company funds, and you brought your mistress into my mother's home while you thought I was dying in a clinic." I turned to the lead detective. "Detective, Mr. Vance has systematically transferred over $12 million from Sterling Global accounts into unlisted European holdings over the past 3 months. My legal team has provided the complete digital audit trail, along with video evidence recorded right here in this house. The detective nodded grimly. Julian Vance, you are under arrest for grand larceny, corporate fraud, and embezzlement. The officers stepped forward, pulling Julian up from the floor and twisting his arms behind his back to slap silver handcuffs onto his wrists. He began to weep openly, begging the guests, his former business peers, to help him. But every single person turned their backs on him, looking away in disgust. Chloe tried to slip quietly into the crowd, but I called her out. Miss Montgomery. She froze, trembling violently as she turned to face me. The diamond necklace around your neck belongs to my family, I said smoothly. Remove it, now. With shaking, terrified fingers, Chloe unclasped the heavy diamond strand and handed it over to Marcus. And as for the red robe, I added, looking at her ruined, wet outfit, you can keep it. You're going to need something warm when security escorts you off my property and leaves you at the front gates without your luggage, your car, or your credit cards, all of which were leased under Sterling Global accounts and have been permanently canceled. Please, Mrs. Sterling, I didn't know, Chloe sobbed, dropping to her knees just as Julian had. He lied to me. He told me you were divorcing him. You laughed when you tore my clothes, Chloe, I said softly, looking down at her. You told me that money buys obedience and that I was a nobody. Today you learned that money can build a trap, but character is what keeps you out of it. Security guards grabbed Chloe by the arms, lifting her to her feet and dragging her out the front doors as she screamed and cried. Julian was led away in handcuffs, his pathetic pleas echoing down the driveway until the police doors slammed shut. The foyer was dead silent. The 50 wealthy guests stood frozen, entirely humbled by the sudden, terrifying display of absolute power. I turned to face them, my posture straight, the cashmere coat wrapped securely around me. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice commanding the entire space. The gala is over. My staff will see you to your vehicles, and if any of you ever treat a worker in this city with the disrespect I witnessed tonight, ensure your financial affairs are in order, because Sterling Global will personally oversee your ruin. Without another word, the guests scrambled toward the exit, eager to escape my sight. Within 20 minutes, the grand mansion was quiet again. Marcus stood beside me as the senior staff members began cleaning up the mess left behind in the foyer. I walked over to Maria, a senior maid who had worked for my family for 20 years and had kept my secret throughout the test. Thank you, Maria, I said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. Starting tomorrow, every member of the household staff will receive a 50% raise, full health benefits, and guaranteed pension plans. No one in this house will ever be treated as invisible again. Maria had tears in her eyes as she nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Sterling. I walked out onto the grand balcony overlooking the vast estate. The cool night air brushed against my face, washing away the final remnants of pain and deception. I had lost a husband, but I had reclaimed my strength, my dignity, and my legacy. I looked up at the moonlit sky, knowing that from this moment on, my life would be built strictly on truth, power, and unyielding self-respect.